right, good afternoon, everyone. So I am delighted to be with you today. And our theme this afternoon is heading into the unknown. So for most of you, that sounds like a very scary venture. And what we're going to try to do today in my talk is make that unknown a little more known. So what is it that we actually want? And to be very clear, going into the unknown, that we have control of our future and that we make it about our own vision. So I'm going to be talking to you this afternoon about the importance of having a very powerful imagination and what are some of those philosophical foundations that we have for mental imagery, just as a skill set. It's such a vital one. So when I was a freshman in college, I sat my father down. I opened up our Encyclopedia Americana, which is what they used about 100 years ago, and I pointed to the steps found on the campus of Trinity College. Trinity is a college in Dublin and is considered to be the Harvard of Ireland. I pointed to the picture, I looked at my father, and I said, "I'm going to go there for a semester, Dad." He said, "All right, whatever. We don't do that sort of thing. We're just middle class. We don't send our children to prestigious colleges. We don't have that type of money." I was a little shocked and extremely disappointed, to say the least. I looked at my dad and I said, "All right." He walked out of the room. I could not stop thinking about that picture. And that's where part of my dream began. I researched and began making lists of exactly how you can study abroad. How do Americans study and go to European colleges? How is it done? I took a second job. I saved up just enough money to be able to try to get enough spending money to be able to see myself doing this. And exactly 1 year later, I found myself on those very same steps. I was enrolled for a summer semester at Trinity, and I was thrilled. What was happening? What was I experiencing? I wondered. What I discovered over doing this over the course of my career for the past 25 years is that I was using the power of my imagination and picturing in vivid images how I would hope things would turn out. Einstein said, "Imagination is everything. It is the preview to life's coming attractions." And Viktor Frankl, the esteemed Austrian philosopher and psychologist, he said, "Among all living things, it's only we humans that can envision our futures and play out our mental scenarios of how we will make those visions a reality." Everything starts with a vision. If you have an image for yourself and a clear picture, if you can envision it, you always end up creating it. Every great feat, every challenging feat happens in this way. If you think back to your most challenging goals that you've experienced in your life, think about the fact that it all started with that basic picture. So every great athlete, every Olympian, studies have shown that mental imagery actually can boost and enhance mental performance and athletic ability. When the day comes and they have to make that shot that wins the game, or they have to cross that finish line that gets them that gold medal, what they found out, studies show, that they've rehearsed taking that shot hundreds of times before they actually had to do it. They played it out in their mind's eye, and when the day came, they simply carried it out once again. So mental imagery, again, it has this incredible power to actually boost not only your athletic performance, but your performance in any goal that you're seeking to achieve and trying to work towards. So Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, he said, "It is impossible to think without an image." He called it phantasma. And he felt that images play an actual key role in our desire and our motivation. Aristotle has actually been accredited with the very concept, inventing the very concept of imagination. when something that you hold dear, when something that you want to see happen right before you and you don't actually have the image, your desire and motivation to try to see it and achieve it is really, really motivated by the image that you wish for. So it all starts with the picture that you have. And interestingly enough, the personality, or as the ancient Greeks said, the soul views images just as if it were seeing. It calculates and deliberates what is to come by reference to what is present. 10 years ago, I walked into a friend's house about to sit down and have dinner. But before that could happen, I took him by the arm, I dragged him into his back office, and I ran around the room. I pointed to the desk, chair, and walls, and I said, I'm going to become a speaker one day. And when I do, I want my office to have pale purple walls and a giant yellow chair in the center for when I meet clients. That's great. Good idea. Good luck with that. By the way, I'm quitting my job. What? Have you lost your mind? Yep, that's what I'm doing. He left the room. 1 year later, I decided to put my graduate degree finally to use, and I became certified in applied philosophy. I found myself living for a couple of weeks in beautiful Sicily, and I came back home to Cleveland. I was pumped up. I wanted to become a speaker and a coach, and I began doing everything I could to network with as many people as I could. While at lunch one day, a woman had caught word of what I was hoping to do. She said, I think some of your ideas are good. They're decent. She goes, but you'll need a space. You're going to need a space in order to be able to see some of these clients. She said, I'm just the person for you to talk to. She gave me the name and number of a very good friend of hers, and she said she's looking to rent out her office on the days she's not there. She said, give her a call, see what she could do for you. So I did just that. I called her up. We set up a time for me to meet and to look at the office. When I showed up that afternoon, she took me into the back room, and the first thing I noticed were pale purple walls and 2 giant yellow chairs in the center. I rented the office that afternoon. So a perfect time to begin to try to envision what you want your future to be like is during times of considerable change. None of us like change, right? We actually really hate it. But it's a vital part of our lives, and it's a crucial part of our existence. We resist it as much as we can. It stresses us out. But when we really get down to it, this is really all we have. So the word change, interestingly enough, it comes from the Celtic word cambir, and that word simply means to exchange or barter. So think about what they did in the olden days when we talked about bartering in the late 18th century. One of my very favorite shows I watch over and over again, all the repeats. It was a show from the late 1970s and early 80s. And you're way too young to know it, but the show was called Little House on the Prairie, and till this day I still watch it. I watch it over and over again. But one of the things that they did in Little House is they would barter. They didn't have the cash to actually go in and purchase and make a purchase of something that they truly needed. So they would go in with perhaps a farm machine or one of their livestock, maybe a dozen fresh farm eggs. They would go in and they would exchange that. They would give that up in exchange for something that they truly needed. It's the exact same thing that we're doing for change, within change. It's an exchange, it's a bartering. So, and whenever we barter, yes, we certainly lose. We always do give up something. But this incredible thing happens with loss. Loss awakens us to our own sense of humanity and can create a space that's livelier in the very void in which it leaves. And we always gain something vital to our own sense of creative growth. So the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, he had a lot to say when he looked around and he wanted to try to conclude, what was it all about? What was it that made life so darn special? Heraclitus wanted to be sure of something. And the one thing he said that I know without a shadow of a doubt is that the world is constantly filled with change. That's one thing that I can make book on and know for certain. Those of you remember from science class, Pascal, he was a mathematician and scientist from the 17th century. And Pascal said, we humans were always changing. Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, he said the purpose of change is self-improvement. If we fear it, we become paralyzed and stagnant. We must see it as an opportunity and allow it to work for us. So interestingly enough, when we look at the etymology, and all that simply means is the root or the history of a word. When we look at the etymology of the word vision, it comes from the Latin word visum, which means that which is seen, and the ancient Sanskrit word, which means I know. The Sanskrit word is Veda, V-E-D-A. And that Sanskrit word simply is equated and equal to or defined as I know. So the very definition of the word vision is already an affirmation of truth. I know I will do this or become that. I know. My very favorite book of all time, Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl. In it, Dr. Frankl writes about one of the most horrific, challenging changes a person can endure. Being a victim in a Nazi concentration camp. Dr. Frankl found himself at the height of his career. He and his family found himself in Auschwitz, one of the largest concentration camps in Nazi history. So Frankl is now entering this camp, and he's going to now experience torture and suffering that he has never known or seen the likes of in his whole history. So what he does is remarkable. He takes his philosophy and his psychology background, and he begins to put his money where his mouth is. So if his work and his research in psychology and philosophy, if they were accurate, he was going to put them to the test at the height of the most intense suffering that he was going to be enduring for the next 4 years. So what Frankl begins to do is he uses the power of his imagination to conjure up these vivid images. And he starts with the most precious of all. He starts with the image of his beautiful wife. And he holds that image of his wife in his mind's eye, and he focuses on that throughout his days in the camp. The second image that he had for himself, that he continued to focus on, was the image that he had prior to entering the camp, the image that he had of himself teaching. Teaching and writing were two things that he was passionate about and loved. And so he kept these images in his mind's eye, and this is what altered and changed his state of mind. Studies show those that actually survived concentration camps did so because they were able to conjure up vivid images and allow their imagination to serve and assist them to change and alter their state of mind. William James, one of my favorite philosophers, he's actually a philosopher and a psychologist, he had a great quote. He said, "Believe that life is worth living, and your very belief will help create the fact." So our very mere acting as if can allow us to be certain about it. We can feel as though that vision is already a reality. James urged us to study the person that you want to become. Study someone that's already done it. So think of a challenging goal that you would like to achieve and look at a person that's already achieved it. James said, take on the posture, the tone, and demeanor of that person. Become them. And we know that the greatest actors do this with ease. So one of my very favorite actresses of all time, gorgeous, incredibly talented, Charlize Theron. So I'll never forget, she was interviewed right after she won the Academy Award. She won it for a movie called Monster. So Charlize Theron is this beautiful actress, and she literally turns into a monster. She plays the character of a serial killer, ends up winning the Academy Award. She gets the award, she goes on to interview. They were asking her in an interview, "Ms. Theron, how did you make this incredible transformation? How did you go from this iconic beauty to this literal monster, the serial killer? Eileen Wuornos was the monster and the serial killer that she was portraying. It was an actual biopic of Eileen and her life. And I'll never forget what Charlize said. She said, I did the simplest of all things. She said, I acted as if. And I studied the way Eileen actually walked. She said, I studied her gait. And she said she did something rather unusual. When she stepped forward, she would lean her hip out and she would have like this very pronounced walk, and her hip would be thrown out to the right. And she said, I began to take on that posture. I began to walk exactly as she did. And from that slight little shift of her hip, the character was born and the transformation began. 10 years ago, I sat my friend down and I announced that I was going to become a speaker. I wanted to do something that I truly valued. I wanted to finally put my graduate degree to use. I wanted to use philosophy to help inspire and motivate others. Today, I'm doing a TED Talk on that very same subject. My picture is now real.